camera here. It's very moving for us up here to be able to see all of you, and it really warms our heart just to be together. This sermon is called Decluttering Our Lives to Find Gold. When I was in grade school, I used to collect baseball cards. Are there any baseball card collectors out there? I know Al Gellin somewhere. I loved opening the thin, crisp packages to see what was inside. I scoured the statistics, ingesting every at-bat, game played, and runs batted in. I knew exactly what Wade Boggs hit in 1986, how many strikeouts Roger Clemens had in his rookie year, and how close my favorite player, Mike Schmidt, was to the all-time home run record. And I knew exactly how much each card was worth down to the penny. Collecting cards was both about having fun in the present and investing in the future. And just like my uncle, whose Mickey Mantles were now worth the future, that is if my grandmother hadn't thrown them all in the trash, if I cared for them just so, pushing the good ones in clear plastic binders, it would pay off later. Always to plan until the 1993. Some of you remember that year. My sophomore year of college, when the baseball players went on strike and the value of baseball cards went down the drain. Suddenly they were worth nothing. I had learned the hard truth of all markets, even baseball card ones. What goes up must inevitably come down. And for a while I was devastated. My college nest egg was gone. All that time and energy I had placed into the hobby had been wasted. Or had it? Was making money the central purpose of the hobby, or was it so much more? Wasn't it about bonding with friends, being part of a team of like-minded people from around the country, and just the pure joy of immersing myself in a world beyond my own? That, as the commercial tells us, was priceless. In our lives, there are many things whose value fluctuates, changing depending on circumstance and situation. And sometimes it just takes a calamitous event to truly teach us about what really matters. In late May, a group of B'nai Mitzvah students-to-be sat down with event planner extraordinaire Liz Grady. Liz has been wandering around wherever you are. To get advice on how to move forward with their big day. COVID had thrown doubt on everything, and even whether they could hold the event at all was now in question. In the Zoom conference room, Liz challenged the pre-adolescents, there goes my book, about the purpose of their coming-of-age ceremony. Becoming a Jewish adult in front of family and friends was not going to be a good enough answer. What makes it so special for you, as she asked them, for anyone else, forcing them to go deeper, and each time they did, she asked for more. Yet, yes, but what is it really about? We heard answers about grandparents and great-grandparents, about sports and academic accomplishments, about the completion of years of religious school. For each of the brave members of the group who agreed to be challenged, the answer was different. Only by digging deeper could they really get started with their planning process. Liz was following a technique she had learned from Priya Parker's The Art of Gathering, who calls this technique her Passover principle. Why is this night different from all others? As Parker suggests in a section of the book she calls Drill, Baby, Drill, take the reasons you think you are gathering and keep drilling below. Ask why you are doing it. When you get an answer, ask why again. Only by finding why we are really doing what we are doing can we figure out how to move forward. So much of our life is clutter, taking us away from what we first came to do in the first place. I'm reminded of the classic Jewish story of the poor couple with 10 kids, living in a cramped one-room house. Who go to the rabbi for advice on how to simplify their lives. Bring in your chickens, they are told. And when they return even more stressed out, they are told to bring in the sheep as well. Now at their wits' end, they are told to bring in the cows. You can imagine the commotion. What? They say in astonishment, but this is a community that listens to their rabbi no matter what. They do so anyways. Now they're in such a bad state, they're literally falling apart. You can remove the animals, the rabbi tells them, and suddenly the house is quiet. And they realize the way things were before was not as bad as they once thought. The pandemic has had a similar effect on us. Without realizing it, we had been slowly bringing in more and more noise into our lives. Possessions, activities, technologies, things meant to bring joy and satisfaction that now just weighed us down. And for a while in late March, early April, we were forced into small confines. Commutes to work and school, the shuttling of children, dates with friends and family, everything had come to a halt. Believe it or not, we see a lot of traffic out there on Transit Drive. It was quiet. It was quiet for a little while. At first, it was frustrating and stifling, but then perhaps it was liberating. At the Lazarus Klein, this meant long Monopoly games, cooking sessions, wild games of basketball and frisbee, walks around the block, around the neighborhood, around anywhere that was less than a half-hour drive from our house. For the first time in a long time, we had time just to be. Don't get me wrong, these past 6 months have been quite challenging, with plenty of moments of despair and frustration. Just look at trying to do a sermon on the top of a roof. Here in Buffalo, we have been cut off from our extended family, with Ashira and I not having seen our parents or siblings for the entire time of the pandemic. Normal plans, our kids' beloved overnight camp, trips to the Jersey Shore or out of the area, postponed indefinitely. And add to that the expected fighting and mess that accompanies a house filled with 3 school-age kids and 2 rambunctious puppies. And for many of you, the consequences of COVID have been far worse. None of this should be minimized. But I hope you felt like I have, that this has also been an opportunity to reset our lives, not only our personal ones, but our communal ones. Here at Shir Shalom, all the normal activities were suddenly removed, and we could start over, asking the question that Liz Grady asked the B'nai Mitzvah students: why? Being so constrained forced us to make choices, forced us to decide what truly mattered. In Kabbalistic parlance, this act of editing our actions is called simsun, or contraction. Isaac Luria introduced this concept to the world in the 16th century, as he considered how a God of infinite possibilities could create a finite world. This painfully shy but brilliant teacher spoke barely above a whisper, talked about a God who needed to contract in order for the world to expand. I felt this idea of Simsun on Rosh Hashanah. We had decluttered, and in doing our very best impression of Marie Kondo, we uncovered gold. Many, for the first time in a long time, felt the emotions of these most precious days rush at them, felt tears in your eyes. One moment in particular stands out for me. Tashlik at the JCC. This ancient ceremony of tossing breadcrumbs to remove sins had grown a little stale. But here in this new spot by the bridge over Ellicott Creek on the bike path, I felt overcome with emotion. Because we were standing beside a bridge, I asked Dr. Andy Simons to play Gesher Zar Ma'od, the famous song by Rabbi Nachman of Braslov that tells us the whole world is a narrow bridge, and the ikar, the essential thing, is not to be afraid. Well, I have sung this many times on High Holy Days, even written a sermon or two with it as its central message. This year, the words hit me differently. What makes us not afraid is the ikar, is the essential thing. By focusing on what truly matters, we knew that what we should preserve, and because we did, we had nothing to fear. Forced to make hard choices, removing the extraneous, eliminating the unnecessary. We had uncovered the inkar, the essential, not just in our holidays, but in our lives. Watching the tiny bits of breadcrumbs cascade like a waterfall, I felt the magic of old traditions being reborn. A year ago, while we could still travel, I went back to my childhood home and scooped up a handful of old baseball cards. My mom, God bless her, had kept them all these years just as they were. I brought them home to my kids, knowing their value had not budged in all those years since I left home. But that hardly mattered. My kids took them eagerly from my hands, devouring the statistics just as I had done years ago. The true purpose of the cards had been restored. Over the course of our lives, it is easy to get sidetracked, to lose sight of what really matters. It is only in these times, standing on the narrow bridge, standing on the bridge, on the roof of Transit Drive, that we are forced to reevaluate, and in doing so, remember the true value of what we hold dear. Hopefully, it is these lessons that we take away from this whole period, and the world, when it returns, is a kinder, gentler, and more hopeful one. Gemar Chatima Tova, may we all be written and sealed in the book of life. At Psalm call, an easy and meaningful fast.